Welcome back to the War Room. We're here for another army review. Today we're going to be looking into the Kharadron Overlords. Super fun army, super cool army. The models are great. Super fun play style, very mobile. I love the boats. The boats are just super cool, super fun. I think you can do a lot of things with the army. I had the opportunity to play against a KO player at LVO, and that was super fun, and it was a good way to kind of learn exactly what this army can do. So let's just hop right into this. So let's get into the battle traits here. So the first battle trait we've got is Descend from the Clouds. Pick a friendly sky vessel in the clouds to use this ability. Set up that sky vessel anywhere on the battlefield, more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Then set up all other units that were set up in the clouds with that sky vessel, wholly within 6 inches of it, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Bring in a boat from reserves, essentially. And then you put it 9 away from enemy units, and you bring in whoever's garrisoning into that boat, wholly within 6, outside 9 from enemies there. So it's kind of a good way to hop on the board and surprise your enemies. Flying high, pick a friendly sky vessel that is part of a regiment from which no units have been deployed. Then pick a number of units up to its transport capacity that are in its regiment. Set up all those units in reserve in the clouds. They have now been deployed. Sky Vessel Cover. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target friendly Kharadron Overlords infantry units while they are wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Arcanaut Ironclad or Arcanaut Frigate. This kind of helps keep your guys alive because anything that gives -1 to hit is awesome. You do got to be nice and tight to the Ironclad or to a Frigate, but you can kind of figure out as you're deploying, as you move around, good ways to be able to get them within 6. A lot of times if you're moving around, we'll get to this in a second, but a lot of their movements with the boats, their special, they have to keep guys wholly within 6 most of the time anyways. So that's a good way to just keep those guys right around your boats and to keep them safe. Transport Skyfarers. So this is kind of that rule here we just mentioned. Pick a number of units up to that sky vessel's transport capacity that are wholly within 6 inches of it to be the targets. Units that have been transported this turn cannot be targets. Remove the targets from the battlefield after the sky vessel ends its move. You must set up each target unit on the battlefield wholly within 6 inches of a sky vessel and not in combat. Those units have been transported. A unit cannot use charge abilities if it was transported in the same turn. So this happens anytime you do a non-charge move. So that's redeploy, that's retreat, that's anytime you're moving. That's not a charge. So you can really kind of hop around the board with these guys and get them to safety, get them where you need to be. Since they're going to be wholly within 6 inches of that sky vessel, it's going to be -1 to hit onto those guys all the time. So it does have to be an Ironclad or a Frigate, but you're going to be keeping your boys nice and close to that boat. Let's hop into the battle formations here. The Aether Runners, fastest vessel in the fleet. Add 2 to the move characteristic of all friendly sky vessels. That's huge. If you're going to run a whole bunch of boats, if you're going to run frigates, you're going to run Ironclad. Anytime you're running boats, I think this is a very good one to add that to the movement, because that'll help move your infantry along as well with that battle trait, being able to move and pull off all the guys within 6 and move them somewhere else. I got hit with that pretty hard at LVO a couple times. I thought I had him cornered, and then he was able to kind of get away. It was pretty frustrating. It's really good. I think he got up to like 17-inch movement on his frigate at one point because of a couple other things that we'll talk about here in a second. But the boats can move a ton, and that kind of helps keep your army stay mobile and get away from danger. Endrinneers, Guild Expeditionary Force. Pick a friendly non-unique Kharadron Overlords hero that does not have an artifact of power. Give that hero 1 artifact of power from the inventions of the Skyports. This artifact of power is given to the unit during deployment phase, not during army composition. So this just allows you to take an extra artifact of power onto one of your heroes that doesn't already have one. And we'll get to those in a second, but it's a pretty cool battle formation. I think I would still lean more towards the 2 movement to all sky vessels, but this is another one that's pretty awesome. If this was in other armies, it would be really good. Every single army has a couple different artifacts of power that are really awesome. And being able to give a second one to a hero is just super cool. Gun Corps Wing, add 3 inches to the range characteristic of ranged weapons used by friendly Grunstock Thunderers and Grunstock Gun Haulers for the rest of the turn. This is your once per battle. If you're going to use this, it just gives you a little extra range. If you got guys you got to shoot at from a slightly farther away, this is one to have. It's a little limited because it's only a couple of the units. Adding 3 inches to range does matter. I play against a cities player a lot, and he's got the Ironweld Guild Force, whatever it's called, where he's got extra 3 inches of range, which is just helps him cover the entire board with shooting. And so this one for one shooting phase once per battle, you can get a little extra range, which is pretty awesome. And then the Iron Sky Attack Squadron, ignore the first damage point that would be allocated to each friendly sky vessel in each phase. So this is another one that's going to affect your boats, and it just means that, magic, if you're taking damage, you take 1 less in that phase. Shooting, that first point, you don't take damage on, and then in combat, you just wouldn't take that first point of damage. I like how a couple of these are based around your boats, because I think that's some of the coolest models in all of Warhammer are these boats, and the rules applying to them are super cool and super interesting and very, very useful. So keeping your boats alive is a big part of what a lot of armies can be. All right, moving on, we're going to the Artifacts of Power. Remember, there's that battle formation that lets you take another hero take one. So potentially you could take 2 of these, but we'll hop right in here. Inventions of the Sky Ports. Once per battle, any shooting phase or your combat phase, pick an enemy monster within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. Until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls for that target to a minimum of 1. This is really awesome. It can kind of help you freeze up big monsters that don't have as much movement or can't get as far on the board without a charge. This makes it so they are rolling on 1 die instead of 2, or 2 instead of 3, which is huge. The Celestium Burst Grenade, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches to be the target. War rolls cannot be made for the target for the rest of the turn. This is once per battle in your shooting phase. So if you're going to shoot a whole bunch of stuff into something that's got a ward save and you just want to take it down, turn off that ward save, and it's for the rest of the turn. So if you get into combat with it as well, it's not going to have its ward save. I like that one a lot. It seems pretty good. Anytime you can turn off ward saves on anything, it really reduces the survivability of that unit. I try and make sure that for the most part, most of my units have an ability, some way to get a ward save, and so being able to turn it off is pretty awesome. This is essentially a once per battle unbind. You got to be within 30 inches here, but if an opponent is going to cast a spell, you say that spell is unbound. It's once per battle, so it's a little tricky, but it does kind of help you to be able to defend yourself against magic, especially if you got very magic heavy and you got something big coming and you want to stop it. You can just unbind it, and you don't have to roll, which is awesome. Going into the heroic traits now, you've got the Cunning Fleet Master. Each time a friendly sky vessel wholly within 12 inches of this unit uses the redeploy command, roll 2 dice and use the highest result when determining the distance that unit can move. That one's really awesome with your ability to be able to pull guys and kind of slingshot them off of your boat anytime you do a non-charge move. It's really good for redeploys. So if you got a unit coming into you, you can kind of protect your guys, and they get that -1 to hit if they're wholly within 6. And so getting big rolls on your redeploys really help you move around the board a little bit more, make charges more difficult, make shooting a little more difficult, because you can get outside of people's ranges and things like that. So that's a very good one. The Endrin Maestro, add 2 to the range characteristic of ranged weapons used by friendly Kharadron Overlords infantry units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So once again, a way to extend the range of all of your infantry shooting attacks, which is pretty awesome because most of them are not super long range. You don't have a lot of long range things with the just like your regular infantry, and so being able to shoot a little farther can make a huge difference, especially in an army that's so mobile and you kind of want to stay away from everybody. Being able to just kind of shoot things down and have some extra range is a very, very good thing. The Grudge Bearer. Pick an enemy unit to be the target. Double the damage characteristic of this unit's weapons for attacks that target that enemy unit for the rest of the battle. Double damage is pretty awesome. You've got some heroes that can hit pretty hard. You've got like Dreki, who's kind of the monster slayer. Being able to double his damage on a monster would be awesome. So you've got ways to kind of make one of your heroes really, really able to dish out some damage, dish out some heat. So we'll hop into the War Scrolls now. We're going to start with Brock Grungson. He's your War Master. He's on a 3-up save, 12-inch move, 8 health, control 2. So you got a couple different ranged weapons. You got Grungson's Boast is 18-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, Ren 2, damage D3 plus 3. And then the Magnet's Charter is 12-inch range, 6 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 1, damage 2. And you can shoot in combat with that, which is really nice. And then his melee weapons, you've got Brock's Aethermatic Saw, 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 2, damage 2. So he's got a pretty awesome profile here. You got a decent amount of ranged attacks. The Magnet's Charter being damage 2 is awesome. The D3 plus 3 damage is awesome on his other one. That one's only 1 attack though, but he can really put out some shots. In combat, he's pretty solid as well with that 3s to hit and 3s to wound. Being Ren 2 is always a plus. Moving over to his abilities, the first rule of Grungson. This is any combat phase. Pick up to 2 other friendly Skyfarer units within this unit's combat range to be the targets. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. If you're just piled in there with a whole bunch of stuff, adding 1 to the attack's characteristics of 2 other units is pretty awesome. And that's any combat phase. It's not like a once per battle thing. You just have to be nice and close and in combat range of those other units. Your once per battle is called Command the Fleet. This is in your movement phase. Pick up to 3 visible friendly sky vessels wholly within 24 inches of this unit that are not in combat to be the targets. Each target can use the run ability and still use shoot and or charge abilities later in the turn. The range on this is humongous. 24 inches is quite a bit of range, especially when you consider how quick you're able to get around from place to place. 24 inches is a ton of range to pick 3 sky vessels, and then they can all run shoot and charge is pretty awesome. So it just once again adds to the mobility of this army. You can just fly around the whole board, and I mean being able to shoot and charge and run is pretty awesome. And then the mustache mounted Aether Blasters at the end of any turn. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target on a roll of a D3, or roll a D3 on a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. He's just doing mortal wounds as long as you're rolling a 2-up on that D3 every single end of every turn, which is awesome. So Brock, and I don't want to say Brock is a must add or an auto include into your lists, but I really like Brock. He's so solid, and a lot of his abilities, 2 of the 3 of his abilities are any combat phase and end of any turn. So getting +1 attacks, doing those mortals just all the time is so good. Moving on to the Endrin Master. The Endrin Master got a 3-up armor save, 12-inch movement, and 8 health with 2 control. You've got the Aether Cannon, 18-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 2, damage 3. And then the Dirigible Suit Weapon Battery is 12-inch range, 6 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 1, damage 1. And that's also a shoot in combat. Range weapons, pretty solid there, very similar to Brock's, just a little less damage. The upgraded Aethermatic Saw is 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 2, damage 2. So it's very similar to Brock's, just 1 less attack. Pretty solid hero there, and a lot of people are running the Endrin Master because he boosts the Endrin Riggers. We'll get to them in a second here. But yeah, the Endrin Master in your hero phase, pick a friendly sky vessel within this unit's combat range to be the target. Roll a dice on a 2-up, heal 3. He's fixing your boats. And then by Grungni, I have my eye on you. Add 1 to field repair rolls for friendly Endrin Riggers units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So the Endrin Riggers, we'll get to them in a second, but they are also already able to do those field repairs. So he is just going to keep your boats alive. So if you want to play based around your boats, if you want to make sure that your boats are a huge part of your gameplay, I think the Endrin Master is a really, really solid pick here with some Endrin Riggers and things like that to just keep the boats alive, keep the boats moving. Lots of really good stuff here. Moving on to the Arcanaut Admiral. He's also got a 3-up armor save, 4-inch movement, 6 health, 2 control. A lot of what we're seeing with all these heroes, you can get a 3-up armor save, which is pretty awesome. Not a whole lot of ward saves throughout the Kharadron Overlords army as a whole, but 3-up armor saves are tough to get through. So the Masterwork Volley Pistol is 10-inch range, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, Rend 1, damage 2. with the shoot and combat ability. And then for melee weapons, you've got the Scalf Hammer, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, rend 1, damage 3. Seems to be more of kind of your fighting hero. Attacks, shooting attacks that do 2 damage are awesome. I mean, it's only 3 attacks, but hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s is very solid. And then the damage 3 on his melee weapon is awesome. It's only 3 attacks though, but hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s is pretty easy to get all those through. His abilities always take what you are owed. This is in your hero phase. Pick a friendly Arcanaut company unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. Add d6 to the target's control score until the start of your next turn. I said this in other videos. Your control scores don't come into play super often. Not that it wouldn't, but most of the time when you're charging things in, or if you're getting charged, it's very obvious who's going to come out on top. The d6 is a huge addition because you could go from your unit that has 10 guys and their control 1, you've got a banner in there, so your control 11. If you roll 6 on this, you get 17 control, which is a ton. That just makes it really hard for units to pick you up. And that would be down to like you have 1 guy left in that unit, but he's your banner bearer, and you get a 6 on that. You're like, oh, 1 guy is control 8. So like you can see where like you can really start to build up and really hold objectives. I just don't see it come into play as often as a lot of these rules make it seem. Bring every gun to bear. This is once per battle per army in your shooting phase. Pick a friendly sky vessel wholly within 24 inches of this unit that is not in combat to be the target. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the target's ranged weapons for the rest of the turn. There's so many ways you can just make your boats awesome. So many hero abilities, the battle formations. There's other units that help out your boats. Like the boats are just so cool. The ships are so awesome. Adding 1 attack to your ranged weapons is really an awesome thing. It's really cool and potentially very powerful. In the deployment phase, this is a once per battle per army ability. The Admiral's Flagship. So this unit can use this ability even if it is in reserve. Pick an Arcanaut Ironclad or Arcanaut Frigate in this unit's regiment to be the target. You can pick a unit that is in reserve. For the rest of the battle, each time the target uses an all-out attack command, while this unit is wholly within 12 inches of it, no command points are spent. A free all-out attack is awesome. For those of you who are new to the game and don't understand what that means, you get a certain amount of command points every battle round, and you can use on various things. One of them is called all-out attack. This means like if you're shooting with a unit, that unit that you're shooting with is +1 to hit everything. And then same thing in combat. Like if you're in a combat, you can go +1 to hit. And so this just means you don't have to use a command point, which means you can use that command point on other things. So far, looking at the 3 heroes we've covered, they're pretty dang awesome. Like I can see them all being used for different things. They all have good abilities. There's just a lot of nuance with all these heroes. Moving on to the Etheric Navigator. Once again, you get your 3-up armor save, 4-inch move, 5 health, 2 control. You've got the ranging pistol for ranged weapons, 10-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and then rend 1, damage 1 with, of course, shoot and combat. And then the melee weapons, you got the Zephyr Scope, which is 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage D3. So this is not really a guy that you want to get into combat, but he does a lot of other things that help you out with the army as a whole. Moving on to his abilities, you've got the Aether Sight. This unit can use unbind abilities as if it had Wizard 1. So you get an unbind every turn, which is nice because the KO don't have a whole lot of opportunities to do that. And so being able to unbind magic is always a bonus. And then read the winds once per turn per army in your hero phase. Roll 6 dice for each one. Pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this unit to be an enemy target. For each 6, pick a visible friendly sky vessel within 18 inches of this unit to be a friendly target. So for your enemy units, inflict D3 mortal damage on each enemy target. If any damage points are allocated to the enemy target by this ability, half its move characteristic until the start of your next turn. And then add 3 inches to the move characteristic of each friendly target until the start of your next turn. This is why I think he is a staple. If you're running your boats and you want to be able to move even more, you just have to roll with 6 dice. You just got to roll at least 1/6, and you get to pick the sky vessel. And then doing mortal damage is always awesome. And the biggest part, I think, of this is having the move characteristic of that enemy unit. You get these super mobile cavalry units. You've got these heavy hitters that can really fly across the board pretty quick. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, instead of move 12, I move 6. Instead of move 14, I move 7. And I took D3 mortal damage on top of that as well. So he seems to be a very good choice. I've said that about all of the KO heroes so far. I think all of them are very good choices, and I think all of them have play. I don't think you can go wrong with one. We'll make an army list of what we think is a good Kharadron Overlords army in the future. But for right now, I mean, just all the heroes, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I think I have ones that I would prefer. I think running Brock with the Etheric Navigator is just really solid. Drecky Flint, this is your monster killer. He's got a 3-up armor save, 4-inch movement, 6 health, and then control 2. His range weapons, the Aethermatic Equalizer, Mach 3, 10-inch range, 2d6 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, 2 damage, and of course, shoot in combat. And then melee weapons, you've got Grunson's Axe. It's 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 2, damage 2, and then anti-monster plus 1 rend. So this is another just fighter of a hero. I mean, all the shoot and combat stuff with the heroes is so awesome. Especially his attacks, so you got 2d6 of them. I mean, you're going to average out probably getting somewhere between 6 and 8. But there's 2 damage on these, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s is really good. And then if you throw them into a monster, your rend 3, damage 2 is super solid. But for the most part, all the heroes hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s is very, very good. I'm an elf player, so I hit on 3s and wound on 4s with a ton of stuff, and it makes me so mad when I see things wound on 3s. His abilities, you got Captain of the Ailsling. This unit can use this ability even if it is in reserve. This is in your deployment phase. Pick an Argonaut frigate in this unit's regiment to be the target. You can pick a unit that is in reserve. The target has the Ailsling keyword. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the battle. So if you got a big old frigate, you can make it like a special one, and all of its melee weapons are plus 1 damage, which is super awesome. Once again, just another way to make your boats better. You got the Auxiliary Skyhook. At the end of any turn, pick an enemy monster in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a d3. On a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So, end of any turn, if he's in combat with a monster, you're just rolling d3 mortals. Boom, 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 boom. And then you're already that 3 rend onto monsters too. He's your monster hunter, and he can just absolutely throw down against monsters. She can handle it. This is passive ability. You can reroll run rolls and charge rolls for the Ailsling while this unit is within its combat range. He just makes one boat that much better. Right, rerolling runs and charges, and also your plus 1 damage is just, it seems really good. He's your monster hunter. He's gonna make one of your boats awesome. The heroes are just, I can't overstate. I think all the heroes are just really awesome. With the Kharadron Overlords. Moving forward, you got the Endrin Master. He has a 3-up armor save, 4-inch move, 6 health, 2 control. The Aethermite Hammer is his melee weapon. It's 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, rend 2, damage 3. Just looking at his base profile, that seems really strong. He's got that monster profile, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, right? But you throw an all-out attack in, he's hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, rend 2, super solid, damage 3 is awesome. It's only 3 attacks, but he's going to be smacking some stuff around. II Captain, once per turn per army. In your hero phase, pick a friendly sky vessel within this unit's combat range to be the target. Roll a dice on a 2-up. For the rest of the turn, the target can now use the retreat or run ability and still use shoot abilities later in the turn. No mortal damage is inflicted on the target by retreat abilities. So this can kind of get you out of dodge. And once again, like, you have that anytime a boat moves, it can pick guys up and kind of slingshot them around. So you can get your guys out of danger, and then it can still shoot. Your guys can still shoot. You can't charge if you do that with using his ability, but this in your hero phase, so you can kind of get the heck out of there and just be able to shoot, but not charge. but it's still just it's getting you to safety, and you don't take any mortal damage for retreating, which is awesome. So the Endrin Master, this is in your hero phase. Pick a friendly sky vessel within this unit's combat range to be the target. Roll a dice on a 2-up, heal the target for 3. So once again, just another hero who's able to give your boats a little bit of a pick-me-up. I think he's kind of like your most basic of the heroes. I think all the rest of them have kind of what they do better. He's kind of just there. He doesn't have a shooting attack like the rest of them, but I still think he's solid. That flat 3 heal on your boats is awesome. So moving on to the Code Right, he's 3-up armor save, 4-inch movement, 5 health, 2 control. He's got an Aether Shot pistol, 10-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, shoot in combat. His melee weapons, he's got the Battle Tome, going to smack you around with the book. 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage D3. But the reason you're taking him is for these effects here. So this ability is pretty solid. The Advisory Roll. Once per turn in your hero phase, pick up to 3 visible friendly Kharadron Overlords units to be the targets. Roll a dice for each target on a 3-up. Pick one of the following effects to apply to that target for the rest of the turn. So you got Seek New Prospects, which is add 2 to the target's control score. Don't Argue with the Wind, add 1 to run and charge rolls for the target. There's no trading with some people. No mortal damage is inflicted on the target by retreat abilities. The control score one, I think, could be kind of nice. I'm not a huge believer that your control score is super important most of the time. I think the biggest one you're going to use here is the adding 1 to run and charge rolls. That's huge. That just gets you a little bit of extra movement. A lot of charges you fail by 1 inch. This just gives you that extra inch. No mortal damage being inflicted due to retreat abilities is really nice too. If you're retreating and running around a lot, that's a good one to kind of keep your guys alive. But yeah, you're not taking this guy to fight or anything. He's just in there to use this ability and get you quicker and help you move around faster. The Aether Chemist, 4-up armor save here instead of the usual 3. And then he's got a 4-inch move, 5 health, and 2 control. His ranged weapon is called the Atmospheric Anatomizer. It's 8 inches of range, 3d6 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, rend 2, damage 1, shoot in combat. So he can kind of just like blast you if you spike on those attacks there. And then his melee weapons, he's got heavy instruments, 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage D3. His abilities, you got once per turn per army in your shooting phase. Pick a friendly Kharadron Overlords unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. Roll a dice. On a 3-up, add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's ranged weapons for the rest of the turn. So that's pretty awesome. Extra rend is always a good thing. You never complain about getting extra rend. It is a roll on a 3-up though, so you're not always going to be getting that. But anytime you do, you're going to be feeling awesome. And then Atmospheric Isolation is any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a dice on a 3-up, subtract 1 from hit rolls for the target's combat attacks for the rest of the turn. So he kind of has this buff and debuff mechanic that he can be giving you extra rend, and then if he's in combat on a 3-up, you're -1 to hit. Pretty solid, pretty awesome ability there. Moving on to the actual units now. You've got the Arcanaut Company, 4-up save, 4-inch movement, 1 health, and 1 control. So with the ranged weapons, 1 out of 10 of your models can take the Aethermatic Volley Gun instead of the pistol. Another one can take the Light Skyhook instead of the pistol. And then one of them can take the Sky Pike instead of the hand weapon. So each of these ranged weapons, here's kind of what they do. The Privateer Pistol, which is what essentially all of these guys have, other than the ones if you replace them. 10-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage 1, but they can shoot in combat. And then the Aethermatic Volley Gun is a 15-inch range. You got 2d6 attacks here, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage 1, but it's got crit 2 hits, so when you're rolling your hit rolls, if you roll any 6s, you get an extra hit die in there. And then the Light Skyhook is a 15-inch range, just 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 2, damage D3. It's anti-monster +1 rend. And then the weapons here, the Arcanaut hand weapon, this is what all of them have unless you replace it with the Sky Pike. for one of your guys. So it's 2 attacks each, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. And then the Sky Pike is 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, 2 damage. But it does crit mortals, so you roll a 6, it does 2 mortal wounds. And then their ability is called Glory Seekers. Add 1 to hit rolls for this unit's attacks that target an enemy contesting an objective. If you're shooting at people, because this doesn't say combat attacks here, it's just this unit's attacks that target an enemy contesting an objective. So all your shooting stuff, you're shooting someone that's contesting an objective. If you're in melee with someone that's contesting an objective, you're going to be +1 to hit. So a lot of times you're going to be hitting on 3s instead of 4s. And then if you have the Aether Chemist, you can get +1 rend on the ranged weapons. Like there's a whole lot of things you can do with these guys to just help them improve their stats. So these guys being 1 health is a little scary. With no ward save, just on that 4-up armor save is a little scary as well. The strength of the Kharadron Overlords is using those boats to kind of run around and be mobile and get out of the way and use your range to kind of keep your opponent at bay and keep your opponent away from you. Moving on, you got the Riggers. They have 4-up armor save, 12-inch movement, 2 health, and then 1 control. These are your balloon boys, as they are affectionately named. Each of these has a rapid-fire rivet gun and an aethermatic saw, but then one of them can take, instead of that, they can take the aethermatic volley gun, and one of them can take the Rigger heavy weapon and gun butt. The rapid-fire rivet gun is 10-inch range, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage 1, and they can shoot in combat. The aethermatic volley gun, 15-inch range, 2d6 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage 1, but it does have crit 2 hits. And then the Rigger heavy weapon is 15-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage D3, and it's anti-monster, +1 rend. Then the melee weapons, everybody's got the aethermatic saw, 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 2, damage D3, and the gun butt, 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, no rend, 1 damage. One of the big things with these guys is that they can repair your boats if they're within its combat range. So it's the emergency field repairs. Pick a friendly sky vessel within its unit's combat range to be the target. Make a field repairs roll of d6 for each model in this unit. For each 4 and 5, heal 1. For each 6, heal 2. If we go back to the Engine Master, he can add 1 to field repair rolls for friendly engine riggers while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So running those two together kind of helps you be able to heal your boats quicker and more efficiently. And so instead of it being 4s and 5s to heal 1, it would be 3s and 4s to heal 1, and then 5s and 6s to heal 2. So a very solid mechanic there to just fix the boat real quick and keep your boats alive. The Sky Wardens, you got a 4-up armor save, 12-inch movement, 2 health, control 1. Everybody's got a Vulcanizer pistol and a Sky Pike, but one of them can switch out for the aethermatic volley gun and gun butt, and then the other one can switch out for the Sky Warden heavy weapon and a gun butt. The Vulcanizer pistol is a 10-inch range, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, shoot in combat. The aethermatic volley gun we've kind of seen a whole bunch of times, 15-inch range, 2d6 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, damage 1, crit 2 hits. And then the Sky Warden heavy weapon is 15-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage D3, and it's anti-monster. So you kind of see that repeated throughout here a handful of times. And then the melee weapons, you got the Sky Pike. It's 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 2 with crit mortals. And then the gun butts, 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, no rend, damage 1. But then at the end of any turn, these guys have timed charges. So you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target, roll a d3 on a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. This unit can immediately use the retreat ability as if it were your movement phase without any mortal damage being inflicted on it. So they can kind of blow up a bomb, and since that 12-inch is their move characteristic, they can just run away 12 inches, which is pretty solid. You do have to roll this, so it's a D3, a 2-up on a D3, so you got 66% chance to get that through, which is pretty solid. But they're just able to fight and then get the heck out of there. The Grunstock Thunderers, these guys are just awesome. All their little guns and things just look super cool to me. The guy's got like 4 barrels on the one gun. So each of them has an Aether Shot rifle and a heavy gun butt. But then 2 of them can switch that out for the fumigator or deck sweeper, and then 2 of the other ones can switch it out for the Grundstock mortar or Aether cannon. The Aether shot rifle is an 18-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage 1. The Etheric fumigator or deck sweeper is a 10-inch range. He's got 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage 1. It's anti-infantry, +1 rend, and also shoot in combat. And then the Grundstock mortar or Aether cannon is 18-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage D3. And then the heavy gun butt is 1 attack, hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, no rend, damage 1. And then their ability is called Hold This Position, so this is in your shooting phase. If this unit has not used a move ability this turn and was not set up this turn, this unit's ranged weapons have shoot in combat for the rest of the turn. If they're just chilling there, you get charged, you can shoot in combat. Pretty awesome, especially considering that all this stuff has rend, because some of the other units on their own don't have rend, especially the fumigator being anti-infantry, +1 rend, and shoot in combat already. So you got ways for these guys to really put in some work. They've got a 3-up armor save, 4-inch movement. They have 2 health, and then they're just control 1. 3-up save is tough to chew through. And so these guys are going to be a little tougher than your other units. Now we're going to hop into everybody's favorite part of this army, which is the boats. So the first one, we've got the Arcanaut Ironclad. It's 3-up armor save, 10 inches of movement, 20 health, control 5. So it's just a tank. I mean, just looking at this thing, you've got a ton of stuff that you can work with here. This unit, it's got the Aether Shock carbines, the Aether Shock torpedoes, boarding weapons, and then you can pick one of either the Great Sky Cannon, Great Sky Hook, or the Great Volley Cannon. So we'll run through these real quick. The Aether Shock carbines, you got a 12-inch range, 8 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. You got shoot in combat there. The Aether Shock torpedoes are 18-inch range, 4 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. The Great Sky Cannon, 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, rend 2, damage D3 +3. The Great Sky Hook is 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, rend 2, damage D6 with anti-monster +1 rend. And then the Great Volley Cannon, 18-inch range, 4d6 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, anti-infantry +1 rend. So just looking at your profiles for your shooting attacks, you got a lot of firepower coming out of this thing. So this is the reason you want your boats to be full health all the time and just be unstoppable, because it's so good. With combined like with the Arcanaut Admiral, with all those shooting attacks, his ability to give you +1 attacks on your shooting weapons. It's a once per battle thing, but that is so good. That just really is making it that much more worth taking him with these if you're going to try and run something like that, because you just get so much firepower out of all of these. Adding 1 attack onto like the Great Sky Cannon, right? Because you got a D3 +3 damage there. The Great Sky Hook, 3 attacks at D6 damage is super awesome. The Great Volley Cannon, not necessarily getting you that much value out of that because it's 46 +1 extra attack, but you can see kind of how you would build that up, and whether you're taking the cannon or the Sky Hook or the Volley Cannon, like you've got a lot of options there to be able to do a ton of damage. And the Aether Shock carbines being shoot in combat is so solid, being 2 damage. Its abilities, you got the transport capacity. This unit can transport up to 3 friendly Kharadron Overlords units with a combined model count of up to 22. You can just pack dudes into this thing. 22 models is a ton, especially considering some of your units are only 5s or 3s. You can just pack dudes into this boat. This boat can just beat half of your army thrown into here. And then in your movement phase, you have the heavy bomb racks. Pick an enemy unit that does not have fly, and that this unit passed across this phase to be the target. Roll 10 dice for each 4-up, inflict immortal damage on the target. 4-up is a 50% chance, so you roll your 10 dice, you're going to get 5 mortal wounds just for flying over something. And this isn't like a once per battle thing, this is just in your movement phase. So every movement phase you fly over someone, you can drop bombs on people, and you just have to barely clip the unit and drop essentially 5 mortals on average there. Super solid. Your Aether Shock carbines do get battle damaged, so While this unit has 10 or more damage points, the attack's characteristic of its Aether Shot carbines is 4, so it just cuts those right in half if you've taken 10 damage. But you're able to just heal this thing up with almost every single hero in the range, which is super solid. The Great Endrin works. This is a deployment phase ability. This unit can use this ability even if it is in reserve. Pick one of the following effects to apply to this unit for the rest of the battle. The Magnificent Omniscope. Add 2 inches to this unit's move characteristic. Collapsible compartments. Add 1 to the total number of units and 10 to the total number of models this unit can transport. The Etheric Repulsion Field. This unit can use the Unbind ability as if it had Wizard level 1. Any of these are good. I think all of them are super solid. I don't know how often I would use the extra unit here or the 10 more models, because I think you put guys into other boats, you want to have a few more units out and spread out a little bit. If you put everything in this one, I think it get a little tricky. It does make it really hard to kill. If you got Endrin Riggers here, you've got a couple of those heroes, like you've got the Endrin Master, you're just healing this boat over and over and over and over. It's just impossible to take down. 2 extra movement is really awesome. That just makes this thing just fly across the board. Having another Unbind here, just as if it were a wizard. The boat itself is super cool. I love the idea of that, of just like this shield, this magic shield that it's using to just unbind magic. Super awesome. And it's a super cool model. It's huge. Moving on to the Arcanaut Frigate. You've got 3 up armor save, 12-inch movement, 15 health, and then it's control 5. You got a very similar thing with the ranged weapons. You got the Aether Shot carbines, and then the boarding weapons, and then you can pick one of either the sky cannon or the heavy sky hook. The Aether Shot carbines are the same as the other ones, but less attacks. So you got your 12-inch range, 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1 damage 2, with shoot in combat, of course. Heavy sky cannon is 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, rend 2, damage D3 plus 1. And then the heavy sky hook is 24 inches of range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 2, damage D6, anti-monster plus 1 rend. So all of its stats here are slightly worse in some way compared to the Ironclad, but it's less points, obviously. Your boarding weapons, 8 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. But you're trying to do your work early with all your ranged shots and all that. But this ability here, the Assault Boat, this is in your charge phase. This unit cannot use this ability if it is in combat or has used a run or retreat ability this turn. Pick a number of units up to its transport capacity that are wholly within 6 inches of it and are not in combat and have not charged this turn to be the targets. Then make a charge roll of 2d6. Remove the targets from the battlefield. Then this unit can move a distance up to the value of the charge roll and must end the move within half an inch of a visible enemy unit. Then set up the targets wholly within this unit's combat range. The targets can be set up in combat and have strike first for the rest of the turn. This unit and the targets have charged. So essentially, it's a lot of words right there. If you got your Sky Wardens or a unit or hero, whatever, this can charge in and scoop them up and like use them as if they have charged as well, which is super cool. And then they get strike first. So like you got dudes that are flying out of the boat and immediately hitting hard is super, super cool. That's why I think a lot of people are taking frigates instead of Ironclad, not just because of the points difference, but because of this ability on its own. Being able to come out of the boat and be striking first is huge. This unit can transport up to 2 friendly Kharadron Overlords infantry units with a combined model count of up to 12. You're battle damaged. Once it has 10 or more damage points, the attack's characteristic of its Aether Shot carbines is 2 instead of 4. And then you've got the medium bomb racks. This is a very similar one to the heavy bomb racks. If you fly over a unit, you roll 6 dice, and for each 4-up, inflict 1 mortal damage. So once again, on that 4-up for each of those is a 50% chance that you get it. So you're probably getting 3 mortals at least. Sometimes you're going to hit hard and higher and roll 5. Sometimes you're going to roll 1. But just being able to fly over and drop bombs on people is hilarious. Last but not least, we've got the Grunstock Gun Hauler. 3 up armor save, 12-inch movement, 10 health, 2 control. Same kind of thing. You've got Aether Shot carbines and boarding weapons, and then you can pick either the sky cannon or the drill cannon. It's pretty different between those two. But the Aether Shot carbines we've seen before, 12-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 2, shoot in combat. The Sky Cannon, 15-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 3 there, which is super solid. And then the Drill Cannon is 15-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 3, damage 3. So this is, if you want to use the Drill Cannon, that's just to say like, hey, you've got a hero or whatever, a super weak unit that's got a pretty high armor save. I'm tearing right through this and I'm doing 3 damage onto you. I think that's pretty hilarious. And then the boarding weapons, 4 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. The transport capacity for this unit is just 1. Friendly Kharadron Overlords infantry unit with a model count of up to 5. So this thing isn't going to be transporting your entire army like the Ironclad or the frigate is. It's an escort vessel, so while any friendly Arcanaut Ironclads or Arcanaut frigates are within this unit's combat range, both this unit and those friendly units have a 6-up ward. So you could bring one of these, stick it next to your Ironclad, you got a 6-up ward, you're protecting yourself and getting a ward save there, which almost nothing on the whole army has. And then you've got light bomb racks on this one. So if you fly over someone, you roll 4 dice. For each 4 up, inflict 1 more damage on the target. The size of the boats just slowly goes down, essentially. I really like this army. The models are awesome. I love like the steampunk dwarf aesthetic that they have. I think their heroes are really good. I think the heroes kind of and the boats kind of make this army what it is. I think the biggest frustration with the army, is just that the units, a lot of them being 1 health or 2 health, but there's only 3 or 5 models. Like you can just get absolutely obliterated super quick. None of them really have a ward save. The boats can get a ward save if you're next to the gun hauler, but they're just kind of in a tough spot. I would love to see them get a couple more units, some sort of cavalry unit, some sort of, I don't want to say like speeder bikes because I feel like that's really close to 40k. You really run into some problems when the range isn't that huge. But I once again, I love this army. I think they're fun to play. They just run around. I played against a guy at the Las Vegas Open who ran this, and it was just fun to play against because it was like, oh man, I'm just getting shot by everything, and then your boats are just zooming around and your guys are swinging around off the boat. Like I love the mechanics of it, and I think the models are just super cool. Let me know what you thought of this army review. Let us know what army you want us to review next. Like this video if you thought it was useful, if you learned something here, if you want us to do more, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out more content every week as often as we can. Army reviews, battle reports. We're going to be building lists for these armies. We're going to be doing rules updates and kind of how to play the game for you beginners who are looking at our channel here. But thank you so much for watching. This is War Room Gaming. We'll see you next time.